everybody, I'm Lindsay Adler and I'm a portrait and fashion photographer based in New York. And today, I'd like to take a moment to walk you through the creation of a cinemagraph from start to finish. We'll talk about developing concept, shooting considerations, gear, post-processing output, and much more. We'll also talk about some useful tools like Flixel Cinemagraph Pro that makes it easy to create and also share your cinemagraphs. But first, what is a cinemagraph? Sometimes called a living photo, a cinemagraph is usually a still frame where parts of the image are moving on a loop. And while most of the photo is still, there's a small repeated movement that creates the illusion of a living frame. I've created dozens of cinemagraphs and they definitely have that engaging wow factor to them. Cinemagraphs are yet another visual tool available to us photographers to differentiate ourselves and to create memorable visuals. Perhaps you have a living photo on your website that grabs the attention of your viewers, or maybe you offer a cinemagraph as wall art inside a digital frame, or maybe you offer a cinemagraph to clients to use on Instagram or other social media outlets. In fact, some studies have shown that a cinemagraph can have up to 5 times as much click-through rate online when compared to a completely still counterpart. Pretty good. Either way, they're a lot of fun to create and they allow you to do something different. You may be familiar with the repeating GIFs of the past, and they were poor quality and slow load times, but today's technology and tools, using things like Flixel, allows us to share cinemagraphs in HD with millions of colors and share them everywhere online. But we'll talk about this more in depth a little later on, but first, let's plan and create a cinemagraph. As with many successful images, having a plan can go a really long way when shooting a cinemagraph. You can create a shoot specifically geared towards cinemagraphs or add a cinemagraph on as an additional element of your next photo shoot. Ideally, when creating a cinemagraph, you select a subject in the scene where the majority of the image is going to be completely still, but small elements of isolated movement. This could be a moving stream, a bicycle riding through, a wisp of hair blowing in the wind. Too much movement throughout the entire frame gives the appearance of a repeating video instead of a still infused with a bit of motion, and often subtle becomes more engaging. In fact, sometimes less is definitely more. You're going to be switching your camera to video or movie mode to capture some movement, and I recommend that you think very carefully about the movement you're going to select. Typically, when planning movement in your frame, you should select some isolated movement. Avoid having the elements in their scene that you want to be still overlapping with the elements that you want to be moving. So let me explain what this means. Let's say that I have a subject standing in front of the ocean. What I want is I want my subject to be completely still, but I want the ocean coming in and out behind my subject. No problem, except if my subject moves too much. If they're overlapping with that ocean, I want them to be still. Later on in post, when I try to achieve the cinemagraph, this is going to cause me a problem. What I want to do is find ways to have the still not overlap with the moving. And I can guarantee as you try out some cinemagraphs, you're definitely going to learn what works and what doesn't. It's going to be a lot of trial and error, but that's something that you want to keep in mind. Next, when you plan your shoot, you should have an idea of the type of motion you will include in your frame and how it's going to be displayed in your cinemagraph. You want movement that will loop seamlessly, and what I mean is ideally the movement can be repeated endlessly in a way that makes it look and feel as if it's an endless motion. There are 2 types of loop that you can select for your image, and some are going to work better with some concepts than others. A bounce loop will play to the end of a video clip and then play backwards. And this is a great way to have movement appear to be continuous on an endless repeat. But of course, you have to have movement that makes sense for this type of loop. For a bounce loop, you could have hair blowing in the wind or fabric billowing or eyes opening and closing. It would not work, say for something that moves in one direction, for example, a car driving across your frame. If you play this in a bounce loop, what would happen is it would play across the frame and then back up, which wouldn't make any sense. In a repeat loop, the entire clip is played to completion from start to finish and then played again from the beginning. The clip is repeated endlessly, and this type of loop works great for motion where something enters and exits the frame completely, or the action has a definitive start and end. This would be the type of loop that you would want for a car driving across the frame. The car, however, would need to start outside the frame and end outside the frame in order for this to really work effectively in your cinemagraph. Also, you could have a merry-go-round that does a complete rotation and then it blends it in again with the beginning of that rotation to make seamless motion. The more you experiment with cinemagraphs and the more that you do these types of loops, it's going to start making sense. It takes practice. And I recommend that you look around the internet for cinemagraphs to get your ideas flowing. Get an idea for what type of loops are going to work for your concept. I find often that my photo shoots are more successful when I create a mood board, and a mood board is a collection of images that help summarize the overall look and feel of the shoot. And for some shoots, the inspiration on these mood boards might include hair and makeup and wardrobe and lighting. And today you'll see some of the mood boards for the cinemagraphs that I'll be creating. To learn more about mood boards and getting creative with your own portrait and wedding work, definitely be sure to check out my free Fashion Flair introductory video, where I really bring a fashion shoot to life from start to finish, and I cover mood boards. As I said before, you can plan a shoot specifically for creating a cinemagraph, or you can shoot a cinemagraph as part of a shoot that you're already doing. This could be at a wedding or a senior portrait or even for an advertising campaign. But next, let's talk about gear. Okay, so you've got your concept, you've decided on the type of movement you want, but now let's talk about the gear that you're going to need and the camera settings you'll require. To create a cinemagraph, you will have to shoot on a tripod, and this really isn't an option. You're going to need your camera to be completely still because you're going to be recording motion that lasts from 3 to 20 seconds. Your camera has to be steady the entire time, and any tripod will do, but the sturdier the better, especially if you're shooting outside on a windy day. The movement might move your subject, but it also may move a flimsy tripod, and this could completely ruin your shoot. One thing to remember is that you are capturing video, and just like capturing JPEGs, there's not really much you can do in post if you create major problems. You're going to want to get your exposure and your white balance all right in camera, and if you're way off, it's going to be near impossible to fix it in post. You will be shooting manual exposure to capture your cinemagraph, as you do not want the overall exposure to vary while you're filming, and you also want to make sure you shoot a really low ISO to decrease noise. As I'm sure you realize by now, you will need a DSLR with video capabilities, and there are hundreds of these options. Typically, I use my Canon 5D Mark III, and I can capture HD 1080 video, but whatever option you choose, make sure that your video record settings are selected to give you the highest resolution video possible. For the future of cinemagraphs, 4K video is becoming an option within many affordable digital cameras. Shooting 4K allows you to have higher resolution cinemagraphs, larger stills, more information, and really just a higher quality resulting cinemagraph. A cinemagraph is just really a mix between a video and still. And we've talked about motion, we've talked about video, but we haven't talked about capturing that still frame. There are two main ways to capture this still. The first and the easiest way is to pull it directly from the video, and you can select your favorite still frame from all the video you've captured, edit it, and use it as the base of your cinemagraph. This is the easiest way to be sure also that the video and the still match up. You're going to see this technique in action as I shoot a cinemagraph. Also, you can actually take a still frame with your camera, and this is going to give you a lot more raw information to work with and to edit with. Don't forget, however, that the high-res still isn't going to change the fact that your video is lower resolution, so in the end, the size of your cinemagraph is constrained by the size of the video you capture. The easiest way to light a cinemagraph is to use natural light, and because you are shooting video, you want a constant light source that isn't changing, that's not flickering. Avoid lighting conditions where there are dramatic changes in the light. You'll not be able to use strobes to light your videos, and if you do use strobe in your scene, this is going to be used for non-moving elements of your cinemagraph and later brought into post, but really this is too advanced for what we're going to cover now. Just know that it's possible. I also recommend taking a look at constant lights. You could use constant fluorescent lights like KinoFlows or ice lights. You could also use the modeling lights in your studio strobe if you don't have any other options. As long as you're correctly exposing and using the correct white balance and these lights aren't flickering, this might be a fantastic and affordable solution to light your first cinemagraphs. We've talked about concept, the gear, the lighting, and now it's time to shoot. Join me as we create some striking cinemagraphs. For this cinemagraph, I wanted to create an image, a moving image, that you can do with any woman with longer hair, which would just be hair blowing in the wind. But a lot of people don't have really expensive constant light, and maybe you want that look in the studio. So all I'm using here is a ProPhoto D1 Air 500 watt second with a ProPhoto 20-inch white beauty dish, and I'm using the modeling lights. That's it, I have the modeling light turned up on full power. Then I have my camera over here, Canon 5D Mark III, and I'm shooting with a 70 to 200. Now, this is something you want to be careful of. If you're shooting video or if you're shooting a cinemagraph with a longer lens, if you have your tripod mount on the camera itself and you're touching your camera a lot, what will happen is you'll get camera shake. So you're going to want to have a steady tripod, and also consider mounting the tripod to the lens. That's why a lot of these lenses that are bigger actually have the lens collars for stability. So I want to make sure that I have a stable lens, a stable shot. I'm using my modeling lights, And then on my camera, I want to make sure I have the right white balance. Right now in this scene, it's all tungsten light, but perhaps you're in a space that perhaps has window light. What you want to do is close the shades, close the curtains, use V-flats or garbage bags or anything to block out unwanted light, because you don't want mixed color temperatures. You don't want ambient and daylight mixing together. So that way I can get the correct color temperature here by setting my white balance to tungsten. The next thing that I have in this shot is subtle movement. So I have her posing in very still, and then the wind blowing in her hair. I want to make sure that the wind doesn't blow the hair across her face, because then if she moves a little bit, I'm not going to be able to put the two together. So I want her face totally still and her hair moving. And that's really it. I've got my modeling light, I've got a beautiful pose, I want good connection with camera, and then adding that element of motion. For this image, we wanted something really dramatic. I lit the scene with ProPhoto 500 watt second D1 airs. But I'm just using the modeling lights. We're not using the strobes. And these modeling lights are just tungsten bulbs. So as long as I set my camera to tungsten, it's going to be the correct color. Also, what I have to be careful of is that there's no other external ambient light. So what we've done is we've blocked off all the windows, we've turned off all the overhead lights. We've made sure that the only thing lighting our scene and lighting our subject are those modeling lights. For this shot, she's illuminated by a beauty dish, a 20-inch white beauty dish with a grid, and that's what gives the drama to this scene, because it focuses the light on her face and also just to her midsection. Then I used two rim lights, two barn doors from the back to light the sides of her body and her face, and on one I added a subtle teal gel. But these weren't just for rim lights, they served a much more important purpose. In this Cinemagraph, the idea is that I wanted to have fog in the scene, floating in the background, creating mystery and drama. And if I didn't have these two backlights, there wouldn't be back illumination to make this fog really pop. So really, they're absolutely essential to the Cinemagraph. Typically for a Cinemagraph, I use a lot of bounce loops. So what will happen is I'll play the clip to the end and then play it back the other direction. This is an instance where I could do a repeat loop and have it actually blend together. And so what that would mean is I could have the fog move and then fade out and then fade back in, and the two would overlap. I can also try the bounce loop to see what it looks like if the fog raises and then lowers. I really won't know until I give it a chance. What's great about Flixel Cinemagraph Pro is that I can take these files, put them into my computer right while I'm shooting, and take a look and see if I'm getting what I want. Is the movement working? Does it work better with bounce? Does it work better with repeat? So I can see that on set to make sure I've captured everything that I need. In this image, I shot with a Canon 5D Mark III and a Canon 24-70 2.8 lens, and I could zoom in to make sure that the subject was the only thing in the frame and cut out the extraneous elements that are distracting on the side. For this scene, I recorded on average from 7 to about 20 seconds worth of movement of the fog. And that way what I'll be able to do is pop it into my computer later, pick out the perfect movements, the perfect shape of the fog, and then use that for my Cinemagraph. The whole time I was shooting on a tripod, I was very careful that my image was stable. Like I do so often, I'm going to pull the still directly from the video. Now this isn't going to be high resolution, but if I'm just using this for a Cinemagraph, that is going to be perfect for what I need. If I'm looking for stills to give my subject, I should definitely shoot another still with my camera to give me higher resolution. When I select the movement of fog I like best, I need to find a still where she is in the same position, holding still, and then select that image to retouch and put together in my Cinemagraph. There are several ways to create cinemagraphs, but the easiest is definitely Flixel Cinemagraph Pro. Not only does it make the creation of cinemagraphs quick and easy, but almost more importantly, it allows you to easily and quickly share your images online. Let's take a look at how to use this software. Let's take a look at Flixel Cinemagraph Pro and how we can use it to simply and very easily bring a cinemagraph to life. So what we need to do is we need to create a new project. We need to bring in the video file that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to go to File, New, and go ahead and try to find that video file. And so I've saved it here. And I'm going to work with the image of the hair blowing in the wind. And I've selected this video file because I think the movement of the hair looks really beautiful along with the pose. And the next thing I need to do is save this project. So I'm going to create a new folder called Hair and hit Save and this is going to be our working project file where I'll be able to go back and make edits to my Cinemagraph. But let's now take a look at Cinemagraph Pro and all of the different pieces and what it's going to do to help you in building your Cinemagraph. So let's start with this home page, which is the trim section. In the bottom timeline, the areas selected are going to be the frames that will play in your Cinemagraph. And this is just a part of that video that you selected. Now what I can do is I can actually click and drag to select a different part of the video, which is great because perhaps I prefer the movement in the middle. And if I don't need as many frames, I can trim it to make the selection shorter. Next, you will see this purple bar. And what this allows me to do is select my still frame, because of course a Cinemagraph is a mix between a still and moving video. So I'm going to scrub to find where I like her pose or expression the best. And throughout this video, she actually happens to be holding a pretty similar pose, so that will work great. Now the next thing that I'm looking for is you can see that the video is playing from start to finish. Ideally, in the selection that I've made, there won't be too much movement. For example, I'm looking at her eye here, and ideally it would stay in roughly the same place. This is going to make it much easier when I get to the masking stage. If there is a lot of movement, I should probably reconsider and try to select another area of movement. So let's start right there. Again, this is the trim section. Later on, what I'm going to show you how to do is export your still so you can retouch it, make color adjustments, go ahead and improve the skin, and then re-import it into Cinemagraph Pro. This is going to be absolutely essential if you're working with close-up portraits and you want your clients to look their best. So let's move on to our very next option, which is mask. Now you can see all of our masking options, and over again that timeline is playing, but you'll notice that nothing is moving. This is because we need to create our mask. And by default, what I'm going to be able to do is wherever I want there to be movement, I am going to paint that mask, and you can actually see the areas that are being revealed. So I'm going to trace the hair roughly, and I can always go back and make a closer selection. My goal here is to try to hide my edges and to blend them in, to find places where the movement overlapping with the still won't be noticeable, or to feather them in a subtle way. So I've quickly gone over that, and now I'm taking a look and just trying to see where the movement looks unnatural, perhaps here in the hairline, or maybe it'll look like the forehead's moving. So if I've gone too far and I need to back it off, I can switch from my brush tool to my erase tool. This is how I will erase movement. If I want to add movement, I'll select the brush. So right now I want to erase some movement, and I think that I'll blend this into the hairline. Now this is going to create a very crisp edge because I'm at 100% opacity. But if I want to blend that edge so it looks a little more seamless and it will overlap, I can do so by changing the opacity. I also want to look for edges like over here when the hair flips up, that it gets caught, to make sure I'm including all parts of the movement. So I'm always sure to watch this repeating a few times just to make sure I'm not cutting anything off. Again, I can always go through and just try to give myself a believable transition. And I think I need to add just a little bit more here when the hair falls onto the face. Okay, let's take a look at that. So now that I've created my mask, I can start to switch over into my loop options to give myself a seamless transition between the video playing. And so this is how I'm going to select how it will loop endlessly to create my Cinemagraph. So let's click on loop. And the first thing I need to decide is this going to be a bounce loop or a repeat loop? And the repeat loop is going to play all the way to the end and then start again at the beginning. And this often is going to create a jump visually. And specifically for the hair here, I think that trying a bounce loop is going to be a little bit better of an option because it'll play to the end and then reverse. And so this will make things look a little bit more seamless. The next thing I'm considering, however, for this particular Cinemagraph is I think it would be a little bit more elegant if the hair were moving more slowly. And thankfully, I have the ability to adjust speed. So I can decrease the speed so that the hair moves in the wind just a little slower. So now I have a seamless transition from the video playing from one end and then bouncing back from the other. I've slowed down the movement, and I've also created a mask to reveal the movement in a way that looks believable and blends in with my still. Now from here, if I wanted to, I could proceed and do certain adjustments to saturation, to contrast, to color temperature, or there are a variety of presets of effects that I could add. But I'm pretty happy with the color and the way it looks now, but the one thing that I really want to change is I wish I could retouch the skin. So let's talk about that step of the process. I'm going to go back over to trim. And as I said before, the purple line here indicates the still I've selected. So I found a good still where I like the expression. I like that the hair overall is moving in a way that blends in well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this still to retouch. And I can do so by going to the left-hand side on this purple arrow and clicking Export Still Image. I'm going to export it so I can retouch it, and I'm going to call it Hair Retouch. And I'm going to be working with this in my favorite editing software, which in this case is Adobe Photoshop CC. So let me quickly bounce over and edit that skin. And if you want to see more about skin retouching, definitely check out some of my retouching tutorials that go in depth about beautiful skin retouching. So let me go do that, and then we're going to re-import this file so that the skin will look beautiful on the face. All right, so I've retouched that image. Let's go ahead and re-import the still. And I've saved it here under Hair Retouch 2, and when I do so, it's going to update the skin for me. So let me bounce back over to Loop so you can see. And now the skin is significantly more perfected. I've added some contouring, I've gotten rid of blemishes, and I could take this even more to an extreme if I wanted. In fact, I've even gone ahead and lightened her eyes. So looking at this photo, I feel pretty confident that I have a mask that's believable, a loop that is seamless, and also a retouch that is flattering to my subject. I can always go back in, and perhaps if I see a mistake where I'd like to fix or blend in my mask, I can always go back and change my mind, and I can always erase my mask. So thankfully, that's the beauty of working with this program. And even after I export, I can go back and make changes. So now that the image looks great and the Cinemagraph looks seamless, let's go ahead and talk about sharing. So now that the mask looks beautiful and the Cinemagraph looks seamless, all I have left to do is share. You can create a Cinemagraph without external software just using Photoshop, or you can use Photoshop in conjunction with tools like Flixel Cinemagraph Pro. Photoshop gives you the same exposure and color tools to affect video the same way you would with stills. Play around with powerful options like adjustment layers, layer masks, and much more. Now let's talk about editing a Cinemagraph in Photoshop, and I'm going to be using Photoshop CC. So the first thing that I need to do is find the file that I'm going to be working with, the video file that has the content that I want. And I have that right here, and all I need to do is drag and drop it into Photoshop, and it's going to open it up. And it's treating it like I'm editing a video, so it automatically opens up a timeline here. Now, although I recorded this video so that it's going to appear as video, as a horizontal, this is going to be a living image, so I'm going to rotate it so I can treat it as such and actually see the vertical as it was intended. So I'm going to go to Image, Image Rotation, and flip it counterclockwise. It'll ask if I need to convert it to a smart object, and that's fine. Okay, so we're going to work in Photoshop, and the reason you want to work in Photoshop is if you have a lot of toning and color corrections and things you want to do with color. So if I want to add contrast, and I want to change the color, and I want to add a split tone, all of that I can do in Photoshop, which is fantastic. So that's really the power of it. So let me explain how this works. I'm looking at the file here, and I have a timeline down at the bottom. And what the timeline is, it's showing the entire video clip. And if I grab this blue marker and slide across, it shows the entire video. This is called scrubbing. I'm scrubbing across the frame. What I want to do is find the movement where the fog looks best. So perhaps somewhere right around here. And in Photoshop, you have an in point and an out point showing the start and end of the video, but I don't need all of this fog. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag these points in to select a smaller area of video. And so perhaps I only need somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds. And I want to make sure my subject is relatively still during this video. And so I can scrub over and I can end this piece. If she moved a lot, I could end it before she moves in order to make it easier for myself to mask. So this looks great right here. And now what I need to do is I need to select my still frame. To select a still frame, I'm going to scrub over and find the still that I like best, which let's just say it's right there. And I am going to use the rectangular marquee tool to select that frame, and then I will hit Command J. And what this does is it copies and pastes the still to a new layer, which you can see over here on the right-hand side. The problem is it's been added to the video group, and this is not a video piece, this is actually a still. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag it out of the video group. If you look back on our timeline, what that has done is it's created a new layer for the still, but it has added it after the video on the timeline. And that's not actually what I want. I want the still to overlap with the video because I'm going to selectively apply what parts of the still are going to be hidden to allow the movement to show through. All I need to do is grab this still element on the timeline and drag it over to my video segment, specifically over the in and out points. So now if I scrub over, I see no movement because the still is hiding it. This is where your knowledge of Photoshop is going to come into play because I need to mask in order to reveal some of the moving fog. Because right now, again, that still is hiding it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a layer mask. And to do so, you're going to come over here on the right-hand side of the layers palette to the bottom where you see that rectangle with a circle in it. And you're going to click while selected on your still to add a mask. Now, wherever you see white, the image next to it is applied, meaning the still is visible. But if I grab a black brush, wherever I paint black is going to reveal movement. And you can see that now when I scrub, that some of that movement is visible. Now it's a little bit difficult to see where you're masking, so what I recommend you do is hit the backslash key. And this is going to show you your mask in red. So now I can get in more carefully and very carefully mask to make sure that all of my fog is going to be visible. And if I accidentally go a little bit too far, maybe I go a little bit too far into the arm, it's not a problem. You simply switch over to painting white, and this will make sure that this part will be still image. Switch back to black. This part is going to be showing the movement underneath. So I can quickly paint around here to make sure I've selected that whole area. That looks good. And get a little bit more up here. And so I can make sure while zoomed in that everything looks good by scrubbing. But it's really hard to tell when you have the red showing. So if I hit the backslash key again, it hides my mask. And I can take a look and see if I have believable transitions. And the only thing I see that I might want to fix is I might want to reveal a little bit here. Show a little bit movement under the arm. And maybe a little bit closer to her head. And don't forget that with this brush, I can always change the flow or opacity in order to make the transition of movement actually be a gradient. So I could make it be a little less of a sharp line and a little bit more of a fade in and fade out. So let's view that movement again. And I can see if there are any problems being revealed. I see a little bit of movement in her dress here. So I can always go back and get rid of the mask on that area selectively. Okay, so I think that I'm all set here, but I could have done something quite similar to this in Cinemagraph Pro. Why would I bother to actually be working in Photoshop? And the power is this next step. It's the part that is image editing. So let's take a look at all of the different things I can possibly change. What's great about Photoshop is I have the power of adjustment layers and layer masks and color correction and all of that. So what I could do is I could come over here to my adjustment layers and I could improve the contrast, for example, by going to a curves layer and improve the contrast of my video. And then specifically, I could make a selection perhaps of her torso, feather this and maybe just lighten up her torso area. I could also make her paler and lighten up her skin tones. So let's give that a try. And I could do that by going to Adjustment Layers, Hue Saturation, and I could go in specifically to the yellows, which is skin tones, and desaturate a bit, and then lighten them up. And I could go specifically into the reds and desaturate a bit, and then lighten them up. And so notice just in a few steps, I've already done a lot to adjust the color and contrast. And so I want you to keep these things in mind. The benefit of Photoshop is just this: selective color, contrast, and special effects like this. I could then go in and increase the vibrance and saturation, so I really bring out some of the colors in this image. But of course, because I'm using adjustment layers and layer masks, I can selectively get rid of this effect off of just her torso or just her face. And then I can also add a color tone for a split tone, perhaps a blue in the shadows. And the way that I personally do that is by going to my half moon cookie, selective color, going into the black points, and adding a little bit of blue. Now, if all of this sounds foreign to you, you're not familiar with adjustment layers and layer masks and all of that, that's no problem. I have tons of other tutorials on that goes through in depth how to use adjustment layers and layer masks. I talk about adding split tones and playing with selective colors. But I just wanted to show you why you would actually use Photoshop. What is the benefit of it? And of course, I can always go into my still here and retouch the skin much like I would when I'm retouching a still. Okay, but now what? What I could do is I could export the image as an animated GIF to share online, but this quality is going to be terrible. Instead, what I prefer to do is I actually prefer to use Photoshop in conjunction with Cinemagraph Pro, because I can then take this piece that I just created, once it's all color toned and looks great, and then I can export it as a video piece under File, Export, Render to Video, and I can export this as an MP4. I can then take this piece into Cinemagraph Pro, make some adjustments, either do a bounce repeat, a loop, and then I will be able to upload it through Cinemagraph Pro to show a high quality image, a high quality cinematograph that I wouldn't be able to attain if I just exported as a GIF. So let's take a look at how I would use Cinemagraph Pro in order to reach these high quality image goals. I worked on my Cinemagraph a little bit more in Photoshop in order to get just the right color toning and everything else that I wanted, and then I brought it into Cinemagraph Pro as a new project. And here I am, you may be familiar again with the trim settings. And so I've selected this entire video clip, and I have a still again that it's been selected, but it's not going to really matter because I chose to do the masking in Photoshop. However, if you only wanted to use Photoshop just to do a little bit of toning and color correction, you could do that as well. What I really want to do is I really want to play around with loop. Because by default, if I just export as a video from Photoshop, there's not really a good looping option. What I want to do is I want to be able to make this fog look realistic. And right now it is set as a bounce loop, which is usually my go-to when I'm doing cinemagraphs, where it'll play to the very end and then play back in reverse. But it doesn't really look believable with the fog. I want to try something different. It doesn't look really like it makes sense to have the fog suck back in. So instead of a bounce loop, I'm going to try a repeat. And what it's going to do is it's going to play to the end and start over again. But if you watch it as is, what happens is there's going to be a pretty drastic jump. So this is why Cinemagraph Pro has an option for a crossfade. I can do a very slow crossfade that's going to fade the two clips together once it starts again, so it'll give me a more realistic blend. And the longer the crossfade, the smoother it's going to be, the more believable it's going to be. So I think that looks great. So even if I could achieve this in Photoshop easily, which it is actually quite challenging to do, the really important part now is how I share my files, because I'm going to be able to export this as a video that plays multiple times as an animated GIF, or upload via Cinemagraph Pro so that I can show it as a high quality Cinemagraph file.
In the past, cinemagraphs were saved and shared through GIF files, and these were repeated images that you've probably seen for those like repeated cat videos and whatnot, and traditionally this was the same way that you would share a cinemagraph.
GIFs, however, have two major problems. And first, they have very limited colors. Even the bigger GIF files only have 256 colors, which is going to destroy any image with rich color palette. And next, GIF files are extremely large and slow to load. And when you embed them on a page, they can cause load times to come to a halt. This is not ideal when you're trying to showcase your images or encourage people to engage with your page. For this reason, a company called Flixel invented their technology that allows you to create high-resolution images, high-resolution cinemagraphs with millions of colors. When you upload to their server, you are given an embed code that you can share on social media, share on blogs, much like you would with a YouTube video. And these cinemagraphs load quickly and give you incredible detail and beautiful color. These higher resolution cinemagraphs can be a great showcase on your website, on Instagram, on Facebook, on a blog, and it really shows your photographic talents.
All right, so once the file has been uploaded, I'm able to have an embed code. And this embed code is going to be something that will allow me to share my cinemagraph with beautiful color, beautiful detail on blogs and websites, and it's going to make it so it loads instantly. And it's going to have all this information without bogging down my site, without slowing it down. And so let's take a look at what the Cinemagraph looks like and where I can actually view this. Here I am at Flixel.com and I'm signed into the back end into my account. And as you can see, the two cinemagraphs that I've uploaded are now visible in my account. And I can click on them to view them in full color, large screen, which is beautiful. And then I can edit the permissions, so I can decide if I'm going to change the privacy, or I can get the embed code, which is exactly what I want to do. So let's go ahead and grab the embed code over here. Now, if you've ever worked with sharing YouTube videos on a blog or on a website, it's the exact same concept. So if I copy to clipboard, it's going to copy this code, and then I can quickly and easily share this code right here in WordPress. And it's going to allow me to see that file. So right now, this is just in the back end, but when I preview, this is what I'm going to see. I'm going to be able to see that Cinemagraph so that it loads instantly. It is full color, and it doesn't take any time before this is visible, whereas typically when you're working with a Cinemagraph, it's very slow, it takes up a lot of space, and you can't see all that detail. So again, it's extremely easy to do, and then also I have all of these social sharing options. So if I choose, I can go in here, quickly grab the embed code. You can share it on a blog. I can add it on social media, or I could add it to a blog post, perhaps about this tutorial. I come back, it adds that. Let's take a preview so I can see. And you'll be able to see that second Cinemagraph added instantly. And if you'd like to see on my blog how this looks, for example, here's a blog post that I did about a project I did for A&E in Bates Motel, and you can see large, full resolution, beautiful detail in these moving, living cinemagraphs. You see the movement in the background. So this is the type of thing that I'm looking for, and I would not have been able to achieve with an animated GIF. So now, sharing, the key part of what you want to do with your images, you want to get them out there, you want to be able to share them. Well, now, it's no longer an issue because of Flixel and Flixel.com, as well as Cinemagraph Pro. So that's why I would recommend, even if you are going to utilize Photoshop for toning and color correction, or even if you create an entire Cinemagraph right in Photoshop, this last step of sharing and displaying your images is absolutely essential.
I hope you've enjoyed learning about creating living photos from start to finish. I look forward to seeing your cinemagraphs, being inspired, and seeing how creative you can get with this technique.